Good morning again. We start today with the continued unrest in Ferguson, Missouri. Police officer Darren Wilson was cleared of wrongdoing after fatally shooting 18-year-old Michael Brown. Since the grand jury's decision Monday, protests in Ferguson turned violent, and there have been 126 arrests, and an estimated 60 buildings were looted, vandalized, or burnt down. And late yesterday, Officer Wilson resigned from the Ferguson Police Department, and he wrote, "It was my hope to continue in police work, but the safety of other police officers and the community are of paramount importance to me. It is my hope that my resignation will allow the community to heal." For reaction to this and for what's next for the Brown family, we're joined by their attorney, Benjamin Crump. Mr. Crump, what do you think Officer Wilson's resignation will do, if anything, to help heal the community?
Well, Nora, this was not unexpected news, I think, for the community or the family of Michael Brown Jr. We always felt Officer Wilson would do what was in his best interest, both personally and professionally, and we think that he would not have been very effective for the Ferguson Police Department, nor for the Ferguson community, if he had continued to be a police officer in that community. And so we think that the community all expected this.
Mm-hmm. Will it change at all your decision to move forward with additional legal action?
Certainly not, nor the family greatly wanted to have the killer of their unarmed son held accountable. They really will look at every legal avenue, but they are still troubled by the things that happened in the grand jury proceeding, as well as Officer Darren Wilson statements when he said that his conscience was clear and that he would do the same thing over again. They just feel that's just very cold. It's one of those things where you would hope that even if a police officer felt they had to use lethal force, that they would have some consideration. His mother and father don't think Officer Wilson had any consideration for their child, and they wonder if he ever had a conscience. And so that's troubling to them. And we want police officers that do have a conscience in our community, not police officers that are as cold as ice and see our children as demons and criminals.
What specific legal action will you pursue in the future on behalf of Michael Brown and his family?
No, the family will pursue all the legal avenues, potential civil wrongful death lawsuit, as well as look at pushing forward with proposed legislation for the Michael Brown law, working with the National Bar Association, the NAACP, National Action Network, and others to have it where it is required that every police officer in every American city is required to have video body cameras, so to be transparent, and we won't see this play out over and over again, whether it's in New York or Louisiana or Texas. You see young people of color, especially young black and brown boys, being killed at the hands of the people to protect and serve them, and they're never held accountable, largely due to this process, this grand jury process that needs to be indicted. It's broken. It continues to yield the same results over and over again, where they kill our children and they're never held accountable. We have to change that entire process to have a special prosecutor appointed, and Justice Scalia spoke to the function of a grand jury in a Supreme Court decision, and what we saw that happen in Ferguson was nothing like what Justice Scalia and the Supreme Court said the function of the grand jury was.
Mr. Crump, it was extraordinary to see this grand jury in action and what happened afterwards. I mean, the release of these thousands of pages of documents and evidence from that grand jury. If you look at the front pages of the New York Times today and the Washington Post today, they did analysis of all of those thousands of pages of documents, and they put together questions about whether Michael Brown was charging the officer or whether he was giving up and surrendering. You've seen these documents. What does the family think happened on Canfield Street on August 9th?
They think their child was running from the police, and they thought that he was giving up. And when they look at these released documents, it shows you just how partial this prosecutor's office was, look at the way they questioned the people who came out and said that Michael Brown did nothing wrong and it was the police officer's fault, compared to the people who supported the police officer, and especially the shooter, Darren Wilson. Look at how they let him testify for 4 hours and never cross-examined him. And this killer of an unarmed person has never been cross-examined, and it is so unbelievable to all lawyers you talk to that you wouldn't even ask him one tough question. We had often said after we looked at this transcript, a first-year law student would have did a tougher cross-examination than this prosecutor's office did to the killer of an unarmed kid in broad daylight. And so it further builds the mistrust that many in the African-American communities all across America have with this process and the local law enforcement and court officials.
You know, Mr. Crump, I'm no lawyer, but I've heard the phrase, that grand juries can indict a ham sandwich. And so we went and looked at the numbers. And in fact, numbers compiled by the Bureau of Justice Statistics showed that in 2010, prosecutors tried 162,000 federal cases, and grand juries declined to return an indictment in just 11 of them. So I know how you feel that this process was broken in this particular case. Would you have preferred a trial? And what if he had been acquitted, though? What if Officer Wilson had been acquitted?
People can accept that more, Nora, when you have what we have set as the foundation for the American justice system, trial by jury, where it's all transparent, where all the evidence and the witnesses are cross-examined and vetted. People think that's fair. People think that's impartial. But when you have this secret grand jury proceeding where there's only one lawyer in the room, and that lawyer is the local prosecutor who has a symbiotic relationship with the local police department and the local police officer, and has no relationship or no regard for this young person of color, and then you see the results all the time coming out with they are exonerated, they're cleared, they're swept under the rug, and we're told to just go on and get over it. Well, we can't continue just to go ahead and get over it, because these are our children that are being killed. The statistics are alarming. A young black man between the ages of 15 and 19 is said to be likely to be killed by the police 21% more than anybody else, and they are stopped 3 times by police more than anybody else. So we have to get police officers who are not cold as ice like the shooter of Michael Brown, but police officers who care about trying to have a relationship with the community, not seeing the citizens of low-income communities or minority communities as demons, as criminals, but as citizens that we all have to be together in, that we're all in the same boat, and we have a vested interest. Unless we have this serious dialogue, we're going to continue to see this happen over and over again, and the Michael Brown and the souls of thousands of people of color cry out for the grave, saying we have to fix this system.
Benjamin Crump, good to see you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Nora.